I didn't cry. I should have, but the tears never came. There was only a cold stillness, sharp as shattered glass inside my chest. What had I done wrong? I spent 6 years cultivating his life, only to be judged unqualified to exist in his universe. He wanted silence and distance. He wanted me to disappear from the sight of a future senior partner. Fine, I would give him exactly that, but on a script he could never predict, one where the most underestimated person held all the cards. My name is Clara Vance. I am 32 years old, and until tonight, I thought I was happy. I am, or was, a senior analyst at Pinnacle Analytics. Today, I won the Breakthrough Analyst Award. It was a big deal. It was the culmination of a year of work, of late nights and weekends spent building predictive models that everyone else said were impossible. I wanted to celebrate. I wanted us to celebrate. So I had prepared everything, the good steaks, the ones we usually saved. A bottle of Cabernet that cost more than our first sofa. I had set the table with our wedding china, the heavy, cream-colored plates with the thin gold rim that we never used. I lit the candles. I waited and waited. At 7, the steaks were perfect. At 8, they were resting. At 9, the sauce had congealed. By 10, the candles had burned down to smoking wicks. When Ethan finally walked in at 11, 4 hours late, the silence in our condo was heavier than the smell of cold beef. He did not look at the table. He did not look at the framed certificate for my award, which I had propped up on the sideboard. He looked at his phone, then loosened his tie, his expression flat and annoyed, as if I were just another piece of furniture he had to navigate on his way to his study. Ethan, my voice sounded small. I made dinner, for the award. He finally looked at me. Ethan Sterling, 35 years old, the man I had supported through law school, the man about to make partner at Harrington and Cross Legal. His eyes were cold, not just tired cold, stranger cold. I did not realize, he said, his voice clipped, that my schedule was subject to your little awards ceremonies. Clara. There was no apology. No, I'm sorry, work was hell. Just pure, unadulterated contempt. I just thought we could celebrate, I whispered, gesturing to the ruined meal. He laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that hit me in the gut. Celebrate. You want to talk about celebrations. Let's talk about reality. From now on, I will decide when we talk. I will decide when we spend time together. I am so tired of you clinging to me like a desperate puppy every time I walk in the door. It is pathetic. The air left my lungs. Pathetic. Yes, pathetic. He tossed his briefcase onto the floor, the heavy thud punctuating the word. I am on the verge of a multi-million-dollar partnership. My future earnings will be, at minimum, 4 times what you make. You and your little $95,000 salary. We are not in the same league. Clara, we never were. He took a step closer, towering over me. Do you have any idea what it is like for me? Having to explain my wife marrying you was marrying down? I did it because I thought you were stable. But this neediness, it is a liability. I could not move. I just stood there, gripping the back of a dining chair, the smooth wood digging into my palms. He was not done. He glanced at the table, his lip curling at the cold food. And that stupid idea you keep babbling about that little AI project, it is a toy. Clara, a toy product. It will never, ever compare to a legitimate, high-class legal career like mine. You do not have what it takes. And that was it. He did not wait for a response. He did not need one. He had delivered his verdict. He turned, walked to his study, and closed the heavy soundproof door. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I was left alone in the dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of my celebration, standing on our wedding china. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour. The shock was so profound, it was almost peaceful. I waited for the tears. I waited for the sobbing breakdown, the feeling of worthlessness. But it did not come. Instead, something else clicked into place. A cold, sharp clarity that felt like a dagger forming in my chest. He was not just being cruel. He was being honest. He had just told me exactly what I was worth to him. Nothing. He had just given me a gift. He had given me my freedom. My movements became mechanical. I did not save the stakes. I scraped them directly into the trash, followed by the cold, waxy potatoes. I stacked the wedding china with deliberate, quiet clicks. I picked up the expensive Cabernet, his favorite. I walked it to the kitchen sink, twisted the corkscrew, and pulled the cork. I did not pour myself a glass. I poured the entire bottle, all 750 milliliters of dark red wine, straight down the drain. I watched the vortex swallow the money, the time, the waste of the last 6 years. It was the last thing I would ever do for him. I slept on the sofa. I did not bother with the bedroom. When I woke at 5 a.m., it was not to the familiar ache of grief, but to a chilling, diamond-hard clarity. The apartment was silent, holding the echoes of last night's cruelty. I went to the kitchen. The first light of dawn was just touching the skyscrapers, turning them gray. Normally, my first move would be to prepare Ethan's coffee, the special dark roast beans, the precise grind, the water heated to the exact temperature he preferred. I had done it every morning for 3 years. Today, I walked past the expensive grinder. I pulled out my own tea, boiled the water, and steeped it in my favorite mug. I made breakfast 1 bowl of oatmeal, a sprinkle of walnuts. I sat at the kitchen island and ate slowly, methodically. Ethan emerged at 7:15, his suit jacket already on, his hair slightly disheveled. He stopped dead. He looked at the empty, cold coffee machine. He looked at the counter, bare of the insulated travel mug I always had waiting for him. He looked at my single empty bowl in the sink. His face cycled through confusion, then annoyance. He was waiting for me to jump up, apologize, and rush to fix his morning. He expected the desperate puppy to scramble for forgiveness. I finished my tea. I rinsed my mug and placed it in the dishwasher. I gathered my purse and laptop bag, preparing to leave for Pinnacle Analytics. Clara. His voice was sharp, impatient. I paused at the door but did not turn to face him. You set the new terms. Ethan, you said you would decide when we talk. I am simply respecting your boundaries. I heard him take a sharp breath, a sound of frustrated disbelief. I walked out and closed the door quietly behind me. The energy I felt was electric. For years, a significant portion of my analytical mind had been diverted to a secondary, unpaid job managing Ethan Sterling. Managing his schedule, his ego, his social obligations, his dietary preferences. Now, that processing power was 100% mine. The first thing I did when I got to the office was walk into an empty conference room and call Dr. Helena Royce. She had been my graduate advisor, a force of nature in the tech world who now ran a small, influential VC fund. 6 months ago, I had shown her the framework for my AI model. She had been ecstatic. Ethan had told me she was just being polite to the wife. Clara Vance, she answered, her voice brisk. I saw your name on the awards list. Well done. Thank you. Helena, that is actually why I am calling. Do you remember that project I showed you? The risk analysis model. The one your husband called a cute hobby at my Christmas party, she said. The one that could predict supply chain disruptions with 90% accuracy. Yes, I remember it. What about it? I am building it, I said. And I need to do it somewhere he cannot find. By noon, I had signed a 6-month lease on a small studio office downtown. It was nothing glamorous. Just a locked door and a high-speed internet connection. I paid the deposit and first month's rent from my own savings account, the one I had kept separate despite Ethan's insistence we merge everything. The lease was under my name only, for a personal workspace. My next stop was a bookstore. I bought a hardbound unlined journal and a pack of black pens. That evening, I did not go home. I went to my studio. I sat on the hardwood floor of the empty room, the smell of fresh paint and possibility around me, and I started to write. A friend of mine, an attorney I had lost touch with because Ethan found her too abrasive, had given me advice years ago. If a man ever tries to make you small, document it, she had said. Data is your best defense. I wrote down last night. I wrote the date, the time, and the exact words. Called me a desperate puppy. Stated marrying me was marrying down. Dismissed my salary of $95,000. Laughed at my AI concept, calling it a toy product. Seeing the words in ink transformed them from insults into evidence. The following day, my boss at Pinnacle called me into his office to congratulate me again on the award. He formally offered me the promotion we had been discussing for weeks, Director of Strategic Analysis. It was a big step up, a significant raise. A month ago, I would have accepted on the spot. I am incredibly honored, I said, my voice firm. But I have to decline the new position. I am committing my free time to a personal project, and I cannot give that new role the hours it deserves. He was surprised, but I held my ground. The promotion was just a bigger, more comfortable cage. I was building my own exit. The absolute silence held, but it was no longer his rule. It was mine. Ethan was visibly unraveling. The invisible infrastructure of his life, the one I had seamlessly managed, was gone. His dry cleaning piled up. The fridge was empty save for my yogurt and vegetables. He missed an important filing deadline because I was not there to give him the 2-hour reminder he relied on. He grew sullen and irritable. He could not yell at me for following the rule he had imposed. He could not demand I resume my duties without admitting he needed me, the woman who was not in his league. He tried to break the silence through brute force. He would leave cabinet doors open, spill coffee grounds on the counter, or toss his suit on the sofa, expecting me to clean up after him. I did not. I simply cleaned my own space and left his messes for him to find when he got home. He was trapped in the cold, quiet world he had built for me, and in that silence, I was finally getting to work. The studio was my sanctuary. It smelled like drywall and new carpet, a sterile blank slate where his judgment could not reach. I bought a standing desk, 2 massive monitors, and the fastest processor I could afford. My evenings and weekends, once spent coordinating Ethan's social calendar or proofreading his briefs, were now consumed by code and complex data modeling. I poured every bit of energy I had, the energy I had reserved for him, into the minimum viable product. I called it the Navigator. My work at Pinnacle was about identifying existing patterns. The Navigator was different. It did not just identify patterns, it predicted their collapse. It was the toy product Ethan had mocked, and I was turning that toy into a weapon. After 2 weeks of obsessive, non-stop work, I sent the demo to Helena Royce. She responded in less than 10 minutes, requesting a video call. "You built this in 2 weeks?" she asked, her expression unreadable. "I built the framework in 2 weeks," I clarified, keeping my voice steady. "The theory, the math behind it, took me 2 years of my spare time." She set up a meeting. It was not in a high-rise boardroom, but at a discreet tech incubator downtown, in a room that felt more like a garage. The room held 3 people, none of whom looked like traditional venture capitalists. They looked like engineers, dressed in jeans and hoodies. Helena introduced them simply as the partners at Kestrel. I did not give them a sales pitch. I gave them a data demonstration. I loaded a real-world dataset from a failed logistics venture from 2 years ago, a company that had imploded spectacularly. The current market tools, I explained, flagged this venture as moderate risk 6 months before failure. They were looking at static liquidity ratios and assets. I ran the same data through the Navigator. My screen lit up with connections the other tools had missed pending regulatory changes in 3 different counties, intersecting with a sudden spike in fuel futures and a fragility index in their primary shipping lane. The Navigator identified it as a critical failure risk, I said, pointing to the output. It predicted a collapse with 90% accuracy 8 months before they filed for bankruptcy. The room was silent. One of the partners, a woman in a gray hoodie, just nodded slowly. "You're not analyzing risk," she said. "You're analyzing contagion." "Exactly," I said. They made an offer the next day, a seed round. It was substantial, more than I had dared to hope for. It was liberating, but it came with a crucial stipulation. "We need this quiet, Clara," Helena told me over the phone. "This is disruptive. If the big players get wind of it, they will try to copy it or crush it. We need 6 months of total stealth. No press, no public announcements, no LinkedIn updates. Can you do that?" I looked around my sterile, secret office, the one place on Earth that was entirely mine. Stealth is my specialty right now. The first wire transfer from Kestrel hit my account, but I could not risk putting it in my joint savings. My next step was building the firewall. I used my lunch break to go to a completely different bank, a regional credit union where Ethan had no connections. I opened a new business account under the LLC I had formed for the Navigator, and a new personal checking account, far from his view. I rerouted a portion of my $95,000 Pinnacle salary, my toy salary, directly into that new personal account. That night, back at the condo, I performed the digital surgery. I logged into our joint banking portal. I changed the password to a 24-character randomized string of letters, numbers, and symbols that I would memorize and he would never guess. I changed the security questions. "What was the name of your first pet?" I changed the answer to the internal designation code of my first successful algorithm. I did the same for our shared credit cards, our mortgage documents, our utilities. I systematically locked him out of the financial life I had built and maintained for us. He was a partner in waiting at a major law firm, but he had no idea how to pay the electric bill online. He had never had to. The cracks in his perfect facade began to show almost immediately. I was no longer syncing his work calendar to his personal phone. I was no longer confirming his appointments or reminding him to send follow-ups. I overheard him on the phone in the kitchen, his voice tight with frustration. "What do you mean I missed the filing? My assistant was supposed to—" "No, not my assistant at the office. Just find a way to fix it." He missed a dentist appointment. He forgot his mother's birthday. The intricate, high-stakes life of Ethan Sterling required a full-time support staff, and that staff had just resigned without notice. The tension in the apartment grew thick and toxic. He was adhering to his own rule, "I decide when we talk," but it was costing him. His arrogance was battling his desperation, and the arrogance was barely winning. He tried to break the silence through brute force. He would leave cabinet doors open, spill coffee grounds on the counter, or toss his suit on the sofa, expecting me to clean up after him. I did not. I simply cleaned my own space and left his messes for him to find when he got home. He was trapped in the cold, quiet world he had built for me. And in that silence, I was finally getting to work. 2 weeks passed, 14 days of the heavy, suffocating silence he had demanded. The man who now shared my apartment was not the polished, arrogant lawyer I had married. Ethan was unraveling. He was living on takeout, the greasy white boxes and paper bags piling up on the kitchen counter, creating a monument to his helplessness. He left for work later and later, his jaw dark with stubble, his eyes bloodshot. One morning, as I was leaving, I saw him struggling with his tie, a blue silk one. There was a dark, greasy stain near the knot. He either did not see it, or he no longer cared. His professional armor was cracking too. His infallibility depended entirely on my unseen labor. I was still peripherally logged into our shared digital calendar, a digital ghost he had not bothered to exorcise. I saw an 8 a.m. meeting marked Urgent Reynolds Partner Call appear at 8:30. I was at my desk at Pinnacle when I saw his name flash on my phone screen. I watched it vibrate, then stop. A minute later, a frantic voicemail notification appeared. He had missed the call. That evening, I heard him shouting into his phone from his study, the door not quite closed. What do you mean it went to the wrong client? The signature block was clear. I did not authorize that attachment. I knew exactly what had happened. He had forwarded a sensitive email chain, forgetting to delete the confidential discussion thread at the bottom. It was the precise career-ending mistake I had caught for him hundreds of times before. The toy product analyst had been his real partner, the gatekeeper of his success, and he had been too arrogant to see it. His arrogance was a gift. It made him forgetful. He was so fixated on his future earnings. He had forgotten his past debts. He had forgotten that when he was a struggling law student, my little $95,000 salary was what paid the rent on his off-campus apartment. It paid for his food. It paid for his expensive, heavy textbooks. He had promised to pay me back once he made it. Instead, he married me. That Saturday, while he was out golfing his new excuse for escaping the silent apartment, I went into our home office. I was methodical. I retrieved the old bank statements, the ones showing the direct transfers to his student loan account. I found the scanned rent checks from my old account, the ones I paid for his apartment 6 years ago. I printed the emails. Clara, you are a lifesaver. I could not do this without you. I owe you everything. I put every single piece of paper into a secured banker's box. On Monday, I took a long lunch and drove to a discreet office building across town. I hand-delivered the box to Anya Thorne, the divorce attorney I had quietly retained. She was sharp, wearing a steel gray suit, and she did not waste time on sympathy. She looked through the file, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "This," she said, tapping the loan statements, "this is beautiful. He did not just marry down Mr. Sterling. He married his primary creditor." He must have sensed the shift, the pulling away of the last threads. The desperation began to seep through his anger. My personal cell phone, the one he rarely called, began to buzz at work. Ethan Sterling. I would stare at the name, feeling the vibration against the wood of my desk at Pinnacle. I would let it ring, and ring, until it went to voicemail. An hour later, it would ring again. I ignored them all. The silence was rebuilding me. The energy I had poured into him was now mine. I started having lunch again with old friends, the ones Ethan had dismissed as unambitious or too abrasive. They noticed the change immediately. "You look different, Clara," my friend Sarah said, the one who worked in legal tech. "You look lighter." "I am just focusing on a project I really believe in," I told her, and it was the truest thing I had ever said. My main project, besides the Navigator, was my exit. I spent 3 afternoons looking at rentals. I found a compact, luxurious one-bedroom in a new high-rise downtown. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, 24-hour security, and a view that looked out over the entire city. It was expensive, but my toy salary covered it easily, and the seed funding provided a cushion of independence he could not even fathom. I signed the lease. The move-in date was 2 weeks away. The pressure finally broke him. He came home early one evening, which was jarring. I was at the dining table on my laptop, not working for Pinnacle, but analyzing a new data set for the Navigator. He did not go to his study. He did not go to the kitchen. He just stood in the entryway, his expensive wool coat still on. He looked awful. "Clara," he said. His voice was quiet, stripped of its usual authority. "This is ridiculous," I kept typing. This silence. "It is not us." He took a hesitant step closer. I was stressed. The partnership. It is everything. I said things I should not have said. You know I did not mean it. He paused, waiting for me to react, to soothe him, to absolve him. "You know we are not in the same league," he stammered, trying to retract the words that had defined us. That was just anger. He was trying to apologize. He was trying to rewind the clock to a time when I was his support system. "We can start over," he said, reaching a hand out, not quite touching my shoulder. "Let's just go back to how it was." I finally stopped typing. I slowly lifted my head and looked at him. I did not feel anger. I did not feel hurt. I felt nothing at all. just a vast, cold, empty space where my love for him used to be. I looked at the man I had given 6 years to, the man who called me a desperate puppy, and I saw only a liability. A high-risk, low-return investment. I did not say a word. I just looked at him, my expression completely blank, my eyes holding his. His hand, the one he had held out, dropped to his side. The confusion on his face hardened back into the familiar mask of anger. "Fine," he hissed. "Be that way." He stormed past me, not to his study, but to the bar cart. I heard the distinct, heavy clink of the crystal decanter and the sound of a long, aggressive pour of whiskey. I did not look up again. I just listened to the sound of him drinking alone in the dark as I continued to build my new life. Anya Thorne's office was on the 42nd floor, a silent, gray expanse of glass and steel overlooking the city. She was not a comforting lawyer. She did not offer tea or tissues. She was a renowned specialist in high-asset divorce, and she wore a suit so sharp it looked like it could draw blood. "The box you sent," she said, tapping the banker's box I had delivered, "is a very good start." She gestured for me to sit. "Most of my clients come in with tears and accusations. You came in with itemized receipts." She leaned forward. "All business. Here is our position. It is exceptionally strong, for 2 reasons. 1, the past. You paid for his law school textbooks. You paid for his apartment. You subsidized his career while yours was already established. You were not just his wife, Clara. You were his first unsecured investor. We will be seeking repayment for that initial investment, with interest." My breath hitched. I had never even considered that. "To the future," she continued, her voice clinical. "He is about to make partner. That bonus, the new salary, the buy-in, all of it is marital property. You spent 6 years managing his life so he could focus exclusively on his career. You are entitled to half the reward for that joint venture." She was reframing my 6 years of servitude as a business arrangement. It was brutal, and it was brilliant. "But," she said, holding up a finger, "financials only get us so far. We need the narrative. His lawyers will try to paint you as unsupported or unstable. We need to prove constructive abandonment and emotional cruelty." She instructed me on the new rules of evidence. "Your journal is excellent. Keep writing. Every day. Note every time he is late. Every missed event. Every word of condescension. The $95,000 comment. The toy product insult. Write it all down." I did. It was easy. I went through my text history. "Cannot make your award dinner. Swamped." "Why are you bothering me with this? It's your family. You handle it." I logged the dates my 30th birthday party he arrived at midnight, drunk. My father's retirement dinner, he had a filing. The Pinnacle Analytics Award the night he broke me. The data formed a clear, undeniable pattern of contempt. The final piece of leverage did not come from my own documentation. It came, unexpectedly, from a friend. Sarah, the attorney I had reconnected with, called me late one night. She sounded hesitant. "Clara, I am telling you this because I think you need to know. I heard something. From a guy who clerks at Harrington and Cross. It's about Ethan." I sat down, my heart pounding a slow, heavy beat. "He was at a bar with some junior associates last week," she said, her voice low. "They were talking about the partnership track. And Ethan," he laughed. "He said his marriage was just a formality at this point. He said he was just waiting to get the partnership confirmed, and then he was going to cut the cord definitively." I did not cry. The cold, sharp thing inside me just solidified into steel. He had already planned to discard me. My breakdown, my pain, my 6 years of support, it was all just an inconvenience on his timeline. He was waiting to get his money, and then he was going to throw me away. "Thank you, Sarah," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. "You have no idea how helpful that is." I hung up. He had not just insulted me in a fit of anger, he had a calculated plan to ruin me after he had secured his future. He had planned to leave me with nothing but my toy salary after he was a multimillionaire. My last shred of doubt evaporated. This was not a divorce. It was a hostile takeover. I called Anya the next morning. "I have new information," I said. "He has already informed his colleagues he plans to leave me post-partnership." There was a sharp intake of breath on Anya's end. "Well," she said, "that changes the timing entirely. An old-school firm like Harrington and Cross prizes stability above all else. A messy public divorce right as they are vetting him. It is a disaster for him." We made a new plan, a precise, surgical strike. The partnership deliberations were scheduled to conclude in 2 weeks. We would not wait. We would file the day before the partners convened for their final vote. "We will serve him at the office," Anya said, her voice chillingly pleasant. "In the lobby, at 9 a.m., maximum visibility. He will have no choice but to settle, and settle fast, before his personal chaos tanks his professional life." That night, I began to move. Ethan's drinking had become a nightly ritual. He would come home, pour a large whiskey, and retreat to his study, often falling asleep in his office chair. He was a ghost in his own home, blinded by his arrogance and his alcohol. I did not pack boxes. That would be too obvious. I used my gym bag and 2 large, expensive designer shopping bags he had bought me years ago. I started with the most important things: my personal documents, my mother's jewelry, the hard drives for the Navigator, and the journal. Then I took my clothes. Not all of them. Just the good pieces. The suits, the cashmere, the shoes I loved. I left the closet half full. I left the wedding photos on the wall. I left the furniture, the kitchenware, the wedding china. I systematically erased my essence while leaving the physical shell of our life intact. I was a ghost, too. On my final night in the condo, with my keys to the new apartment in my pocket, I sat at my studio desk. I did what I did best. I opened a new file and titled it Ethan Sterling Risk Analysis. I poured all my analytical skill into it, just as I had with the Navigator. Subject: Ethan Sterling. Primary vulnerability: public perception. Status-driven. Known dependencies requires constant invisible support schedule management, emotional regulation, domestic stabilization, trigger points, threats to professional standing, public humiliation, loss of control, projected reaction to service of divorce papers. Phase 1, 0 to 2 hours, narcissistic rage, threats of legal annihilation. Phase 2, 2 to 24 hours, attempted gaslighting, attempts to contact me, to regain control via apologies or new insults. Phase 3, 24 to 48 hours, panic, realization of career jeopardy. Phase 4, 48 plus hours, capitulation, will agree to any terms to make the problem disappear before the partnership vote. Probability of rapid settlement to protect career 95%. I saved the document as a PDF and emailed it to Anya Thorne with a simple subject line, Strategy Guide. It was the most satisfying analysis I had ever written. The 6 weeks of absolute focus had paid off. The Navigator had finished its closed beta testing, running quietly and flawlessly against 3 separate sets of global market data. The results were not just good, they were undeniable. My toy product was performing at a level that should have taken a team of 10 engineers a year to achieve. Helena Royce, my mentor, called me with the kind of subdued excitement that meant something big was happening. "Clara, you broke it. You completely shattered the curve." The quiet success had, inevitably, drawn massive attention, not from the traditional, sleepy venture capital firms in our city, but from a major Silicon Valley technology fund. They were known for cutting enormous checks to disruptive startups with zero public track record. They flew out their senior partner to meet me. The meeting was not in my sterile downtown studio, but in the private lounge of a major 5-star hotel. I walked in, wearing a sharp gray suit, carrying my laptop and my composure. I was not Clara Vance, the $95,000 analyst. I was the CEO of an emerging tech platform. Their offer was immediate and aggressive. They proposed a Series A investment round that valued the Navigator at $5 million. $5 million, after just 3 months of development. It was a staggering number, one that eclipsed Ethan's entire projected annual partnership salary and bonus combined. I conducted the negotiation myself. I was calm, citing my risk analysis data, explaining the technical moats I had built around the algorithm. They saw the confidence he had mocked. I was not selling an idea. I was selling a proven weapon. We closed the deal quickly. The cash infusion was monumental, but the most crucial part of the deal was its continued secrecy. My investors understood the competitive advantage of being a ghost. I maintained absolute radio silence on my professional success, my funding, and my new valuation. This was my biggest card, and I would not show it until the table was cleared and the pot was mine. In the condo, Ethan's slow descent continued. He was now 2 weeks deep into his own self-imposed drunken solitude, and the lack of my presence was finally wearing him down. The partnership vote was looming, and his veneer of stability was crumbling. He was drinking more, and his work performance was noticeably erratic. I saw on the shared calendar. He needed me to stabilize him, but he was too proud to ask. He started reaching out, not to me, but to my family, looking for information or, more likely, a path back to control. My sister, Sarah, called me after he cornered her at a mutual friend's party. "Ethan tried to ask me where you are," she said, her voice tight with disgust. He was acting like he was a worried husband, but his eyes were just searching for an escape route. "What did you tell him?" I told him, "Ethan, whatever is happening between you and Clara is private. You need to talk to her." And then I walked away. He was furious. His fury was my confirmation. He was losing control of his narrative, and he was terrified. That Friday, I wrapped up my work at Pinnacle Analytics, knowing I would soon be giving notice. I was moving out that weekend. I drove straight from the office to the high-rise downtown, my heart thrumming. The building manager handed me a heavy, polished brass key to Unit 2305. I stood inside the empty apartment, the floor-to-ceiling windows showing the entire sprawling skyline, a view that dwarfed our previous condo. This was not a space I shared with a man who resented me. This was my future. This was my space. I drove back to the condo to collect the last of my essential personal items. Ethan was home, already 3 drinks into his evening. He barely registered my presence. I packed the final bag, walked out the door, and drove away, leaving behind the wedding china, the expensive Cabernet he loved, but I had poured down the drain, and the shell of my old life. I was gone, and he had no idea. The divorce papers, my final weapon, were scheduled to be served at 9 a.m. sharp on Monday morning. I had 3 days to enjoy my silent, luxurious new life before the detonation. It was 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, exactly 2 hours before I would leave Pinnacle Analytics for the last time. I was tying up loose ends, savoring the final moments of my old life, when my desk phone buzzed. "Clara." My receptionist's voice was strained. "There is a Mr. Sterling here. He says it is urgent." I straightened my jacket. I knew what this was. He was panicked. The absolute silence, the absence of his indispensable support system, had finally driven him out of his whiskey haze and into a public, desperate performance. He was trying to reestablish control before Monday. I stood up, walked to the glass railing, and looked down at the main lobby of our corporate headquarters, and there he was, Ethan, in a bespoke navy suit, looking every inch the senior lawyer. He was holding an enormous, ridiculous bouquet of long-stemmed red roses, the kind you buy when you are trying to apologize for a catastrophe. The lobby was busy. Our vice president of operations was walking through. My direct supervisor was waiting for the elevator. This was exactly the public spectacle he wanted a desperate husband making amends with his unstable wife. I took the elevator down, my heart beating with the steady rhythm of a controlled explosion. I stepped out and walked straight toward him. He smiled, a wide, false flash of teeth, ready to launch his performance. "Clara," he started, his voice loud enough to carry, dripping with practiced sincerity. I am so sorry. I should not have said those things. I have been under tremendous pressure with the partnership vote. I realize now that I was wrong to say you were not in my league. It was cruel. Please, can we talk? He shoved the roses toward me. I did not flinch. I did not take the flowers. I stood perfectly still, blocking the main exit, forcing him to keep the spectacle contained right there, in front of the dozens of professional people who knew us. No, I said. My voice was low, absolutely steady, carrying a conviction he had never heard from me before. We are not talking. The smile froze on his face. He blinked, expecting me to soften. I am simply respecting the boundary you established. Ethan, I continued, using his own words as a surgical tool. You said you would decide when we talk. I am waiting for your formal decision on the matter. He looked around frantically. His performance was failing. The crowd of onlookers, including my boss, was now openly staring. Clara, this is not the time, he hissed, dropping his voice. Do not be ridiculous. Let's go outside and talk this through privately. He reached out, trying to take my arm, to physically remove me from the scene. I took a step back, my eyes locked on his. There is nothing private about this. Ethan, I already left. The words hit him like a physical blow. The smooth, composed facade of the aspiring partner shattered. His jaw went slack. I moved out this weekend. I elaborated quietly. I am in my own apartment now. He visibly lost his legal composure. You what? You cannot do that. You cannot just disrupt my life when the partnership decision is days away. His voice was rising now, betraying the lawyer and exposing the entitled man underneath. The change in him was instantaneous panic morphing into a desperate, vindictive attack. This is emotional manipulation, he accused, his voice thick with fury, utterly ignoring the onlookers. You are trying to sabotage my career because you are threatened by my success. You are an analyst, and I am about to be a partner. You are deliberately trying to destroy me. He actually started shouting. You walked out right before the vote. You are trying to ruin me after all I have done for you. I looked him straight in his bloodshot, panicking eyes. I had prepared this line for weeks, turning it over and over in my head. Now, it came out perfectly, with the cold, absolute finality of data. You said that marrying me was marrying down Ethan. You said I was not in your league. I paused, letting the weight of his own cruelty settle over the lobby. I am not trying to destroy you. I am simply upgrading myself to the level I deserve. You have to take responsibility for your own assessment of me. I held his gaze for another moment. Then, without taking the roses, without another word, I turned and walked toward the security gates. I heard the heavy, angry thump of the bouquet being thrown against the marble wall behind me. I did not look back. I just kept walking, feeling the electric silence of the stunned crowd. The performance was over. My final exit was complete. Monday morning was a cold, bright November day. I was sitting at my new standing desk in Unit 2305, watching the city wake up, when my phone rang. It was Anya Thorne. It is done, Clara, she said, her voice crisp and efficient. 9 a.m. on the dot. Our process server delivered the petition to the reception desk at Harrington & Cross Legal, in front of 3 associates and 2 of the firm's major clients who were waiting in the lobby. Maximum visibility, as planned. I closed my eyes for a moment. That was the sound of the fuse being lit. Harrington & Cross was an old-school firm. They dealt in stability, discretion, and the appearance of unshakable personal control. A high-profile domestic meltdown, complete with a yelling scene in my company lobby on Friday and divorce papers served at their headquarters on Monday, was a seismic event. Less than an hour later, Anya called back. He was called into the senior partners' conference room immediately. No coffee, no preamble. They want an explanation for the personal turmoil at this sensitive time. They want to know why their future partner's private life is currently playing out in corporate lobbies. The chaos was exactly what I had designed. But Ethan was a lawyer. He knew how to spin a narrative. By midday, I saw the first sign of his counterattack. He posted a vague, carefully worded update on his private social media feed. It was a picture of him looking mournful, staring out a window, with a caption lamenting the sudden, unprovoked departure of a loved one. He was trying to portray himself as the blindsided, heartbroken victim of an ungrateful wife who abandoned him for no reason right before his professional pinnacle. It was a good attempt, but I was 3 steps ahead of him. The truth, in this digital age, travels faster than any corporate cover-up. I called Sarah, the attorney friend, and gave her a simple instruction. You can tell the truth now, just the facts. The words he used. I did the same with 3 other trusted friends who knew the full story. Within hours, my social network began to operate as a precision media dispersal unit. It wasn't me saying it. It was 4 different, well-respected professionals saying, actually, no. He told her she was not in his league and called her entire career a toy product. The contrast between his wounded victim post and the reality of his cruel contempt was damning. His social peers, the very people whose validation he craved, started seeing the cracks. The ripple effect was immediate. Anya called again. We are getting interesting collateral damage, she reported, a note of dark amusement in her voice. One of Harrington and Cross's prospective clients, a major tech company, is raising questions. They are asking how Mr. Sterling can have sound judgment if he publicly humiliates his wife, who is a respected senior analyst in the very market they operate in. He had destroyed his credibility with his own words, and I was just handing the data to the correct analysts. The final layer of my professional life was about to intersect with my legal strategy. Anya informed me that her firm's internal review team, the one that assesses high-asset cases, had taken a deep dive into my professional life. Clara, she said, her tone suddenly shifting from legal to impressed. Your documentation on the Navigator, your MVP specs, the seed funding valuation. It is a phenomenal asset. My partner looked at it and immediately saw its legal value. How so? I asked. It is clear, indisputable evidence of your suppressed earning potential, she explained. Ethan's constant condescension, his insistence that you were merely a $95,000 analyst, and his attempt to tie you down right before your breakthrough, we can argue he deliberately created an emotionally toxic environment to stifle your professional growth. The fact that the moment you removed yourself from his influence, your company was valued at $5 million, that dramatically increases the value of your divorce settlement. He had tried to belittle my work into nothing, and now that very work was being used as the ultimate proof of his damage. I ended the call feeling lighter than I had in years. I was not just getting out, I was getting compensated for the cost of being married to him. That afternoon, I held my first official internal meeting for the Navigator. It was a video call with Helena Royce and the core Kestrel partners. I was no longer the analyst asking for permission. I was the CEO setting the strategy. The beta test is over, I announced. The Navigator is ready to scale. Ethan's firm handles litigation for 3 of the largest supply chain entities in the country. Our next step is to target that market. We are not aiming for the small fish. We are going after the ones that need absolute 90% certainty in their risk models. The revenge was now inextricably linked to the success of my company. The Navigator, the toy product, was about to start eating into the legal market Ethan held so dear. It was only fitting. The conference room at Anya Thorne's office was all glass, steel, and muted power. It was the final showdown. Ethan arrived late, looking haggard, his suit rumpled. The man with him was Robert Hayes, one of the senior litigation partners at Harrington and Cross. This was not a friendly divorce talk. This was damage control by his firm. They knew the risk. Ethan and Mr. Hayes sat across the table from Anya and me. Ethan refused to meet my eyes. Mr. Hayes spoke first, his tone placating but firm. Mrs. Vance, we appreciate your willingness to meet. Ethan is deeply remorseful about the recent public friction. We are prepared to offer a quick, reasonable settlement to put this behind everyone, focusing on Ethan's career path and minimal disruption. Ethan slid a document across the table. I did not touch it. Anya did. She scanned the terms quickly, her expression unmoved. A severance package of $150,000, Anya read aloud, her voice dry. And a request for a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement covering the entire history and reasons for the marital breakdown. Ethan finally looked at me, a desperate plea in his eyes. Clara, this is best for both of us. Sign the NDA. You get a clean break. I get my life back, and we both disappear quietly. You will have more than enough to be comfortable. I watched him. He still saw me as the $95,000 analyst who should be grateful for his scraps. I pushed the document back across the table. Absolutely not. Ethan's composure cracked. What do you mean? No, that is generous. Clara, you are not entitled to half of my partnership money yet. Anya took over, her voice a whip crack of authority. Mr. Sterling, you seem to misunderstand the situation. Any attempt to protract this divorce, any motion to complicate the proceedings, will result in my firm releasing the full file to the legal press. That file, gentlemen, includes the detailed dated journal entries documenting Mr. Sterling's repeated verbal and emotional abuse, his financial dependencies, and the sworn statement of an individual confirming his intent to cut the cord definitively post-partnership. The color drained from Ethan's face. Mr. Hayes's jaw tightened. They knew the kind of catastrophic damage a reputation for instability and cruelty would cause a lawyer in the middle of a partnership review. Ethan's desperation boiled over into rage. He leaned across the table, his voice low and venomous. You listen to me. I am about to be backed by a massive international law firm. We will drag this out for 5 years. We will bury you in legal fees and make sure you walk away with nothing. You cannot fight Harrington and Cross legal. Harrington. You are absolutely correct, I said, leaning forward. My voice was calm, a sharp contrast to his fury. I cannot fight your firm, Ethan, but I do not have to. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out a single, neatly printed document, and slid it across the table to him. It was the preliminary internal valuation update for the Navigator. Ethan, you called my company a toy product. A month ago, it received a seed investment valuing it at $5 million. I let that sink in, watching his eyes dart across the page. Last week, after successful beta testing, we received an unsolicited acquisition inquiry. That inquiry puts the preliminary valuation of my company at $8 million. I looked directly at Mr. Hayes, not Ethan. I did not come here for your small severance package. I came here for justice and for him to pay the price for his supreme arrogance. I do not need your money to exist. I need you to recognize that the woman you tried to make small is now building a fortune that dwarfs yours. The shock on Ethan's face was total. His lawyer, Mr. Hayes, picked up the valuation report. He was a professional. He saw the letterhead, the data points, the calculated growth. He saw a legitimate, formidable new asset that had materialized entirely outside of the marriage. Mr. Hayes slowly lowered the document. He looked at Ethan, then at me, then back at his client. The realization was clear in his eyes. The landscape had fundamentally changed. Ethan was no longer fighting a vulnerable, unemployed wife. He was fighting the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech firm who had the financial muscle and the ruthless intelligence to destroy his career with a single press release. Ethan, Mr. Hayes said quietly, his professional tone back in place. We accept Ms. Thorne's terms. It was over. My toy product had just won the divorce. The divorce concluded with the speed of a bullet train. Ethan's fear of a public scandal, a full, detailed accounting of his cruelty hitting the Law Gazette, outweighed his desire to fight over money. Mr. Hayes had been crystal clear a quick resolution was the only way to save what was left of his professional image. Ethan accepted Anya's terms, which included a substantial divorce settlement, clawing back a significant portion of his projected partnership bonus as compensation for my years of lost opportunity and financial subsidy. The immediate consequence for Ethan Sterling was brutal, elegant, and perfectly deserved. The partnership decision at Harrington and Cross was, as Anya predicted, tabled. The firm's official explanation cited unresolved issues concerning personal stability. He was still employed, but his upward trajectory, the one he had claimed made me unworthy, had stalled indefinitely. The chaos he had created now clinging to him like a stain. My life, meanwhile, exploded into color. I officially launched the Navigator. It was no longer a secret project. It was a functioning, market-ready platform. We secured our first major contract almost immediately, a massive deal with a multinational technology corporation looking to future-proof its supply chain. The contract alone put the Navigator firmly on the map. The momentum was unstoppable. Within weeks of the launch, a larger, more established technology investment firm approached us with an acquisition offer. They were serious, and they backed their offer with a formal valuation. The final number was $12 million. $12 million. Not a projected bonus or a potential salary. Actual, hard asset valuation for the toy product I had built in a small, secret studio while he was drinking whiskey alone in his study. I sold a portion of the company, enough to realize my wealth and secure my independence, but I kept the controlling share. I became a self-made multimillionaire, standing on the ruins of the man who said I was not in his league. I am sitting now in my new apartment, Unit 2305. The space is light, clean, and entirely mine. The furniture is mid-century modern. The pieces I chose, not the heavy, dark oak that matched Ethan's status anxiety. There is a deep, abiding peace here, a silence that is chosen, not imposed. The ultimate revenge, I realized, was not the financial settlement. It was the fact that my growth was contingent on his absence. The moment I removed his condescension and his need from my life, I rocketed past him, professionally, financially, and spiritually. He was merely an anchor I had finally cut free. I pick up my phone and look at the screenshot I keep saved on my home screen, the final valuation document. $12 million. Ethan was right, I think to myself, looking out over the city skyline. We are not in the same league. I am so far beyond his level of small, insecure ambition. He would need the Navigator just to find me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to hear where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you want to hear more stories of women leveling up, subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, hit that like button, and do not forget to click the hype button so this video gets heard by more people.